Minsk. Top military commanders draft documents for the presidential meeting on Friday. Russian parliamentary speaker Ruslan Khasbolatov addresses military conversion issues in Tyumen. Collective farmers are in Moscow at their Congress trying to influence the government's land reform program in their favor. James Baker in Yerevan in Baku speaks out on the Karabakh crisis. In Germany, the trial of former East German secret police chief Milge begins. Good evening. Welcome to the Channel 1 television news. Last night in Grozny was calm in the sense that there is no casualty information. The curfew from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. was enforced by local units of the National Guard, militiamen, Afghan war veterans, police, and special forces. The attackers of the military bases have not yet been found and could reappear at any time. The Commander-in-Chief Shapashnikov, former military commanders, and about 100 experts are working on documents in preparation for Friday's meeting of the Commonwealth Heads of State in Minsk. The working group is holding its meetings behind closed doors. About 100 people are meeting, and journalists have not yet been allowed inside. The defense ministers or heads of the defense committees of the various Commonwealth states are meeting together with the commander of the United Forces of the Commonwealth, Aviation Marshal Yevgeny Shapashnikov. The meeting is carefully preparing documents for the heads of state meeting. The Belarusian Prime Minister Vyacheslav Kevich visited a military base in Belarusia military district. I came to express my position and the government's position on the fate of the army. Those meeting in Minsk left the government building in the city to a military base to hold their meetings there to avoid journalists. Therefore, it's become even more difficult to find out how the work is going on the development of 14 agreements. The circle of problems in the army is widening, but Russia alone appears to be paying for the army. In the first quarter alone, Russia spent 50 billion rubles on the army, and the Commonwealth members have declared that they will finance only their own armed forces. Others believe that they have no enemies left, and if Russia is defending its borders with a military presence in neighboring republics, then let Russia pay. There are proposals for bilateral relations instead of a unified CIS military treaty. Russia in the future may have to pay for its own military bases on foreign territory. All of this is in the future. The picture today is more prosaic. Even if Russia prints more rubles for the military, there will not necessarily be goods to buy with them. At many bases now, soldiers are drinking cooked carrot juice instead of tea. From now on, in front of the Russian White House, in addition to the Russian banner, the banners of all republics which are members of the Russian Federation will hang. This is the proposal of the Russian Parliament. The representatives of these autonomous regions in the Parliament will from now on become Khasbolatov's deputies. The Russian Parliament is discussing the following issues: the tax law, the Russian National Library, why its books are being sold off. At the request of some parliamentarians, these items were added to the agenda. More evidence of their dissatisfaction with the government's course, which the parliamentarians believe the government is exceeding its authority. The meeting with the government has been postponed until the very near future for lack of time. Today, the parliamentarians quickly debated, passed unanimously on first reading a law on search and seizure in Russia. Amendments proposed by the Chamber of Nationalities were added to the law on mineral wealth. The law on conversion of industrial enterprises in the Russian Federation finally reached the debate in the chamber today. This is explained by the fact that the law was drafted in 1989 as a USSR law, but work was not finished on it, and now there's a Russian version. It tries to find the most effective way to convert military enterprises. This will be promoted by a package of laws on industrial and intellectual property, the rights of inventors, all the creators of this type of property. We expect that tomorrow President Yeltsin will address the parliament and tell about the results of his foreign trip. Ruslan Khasbolatov continues his trip throughout the country. He supports the reform plan of the government now and is distancing himself from Vice President Rutskoy. He wants to adopt a resolution prohibiting pessimism. As distinct from other military enterprises, the conversion process at this motor factory is going well. Khasbolatov met with the regional council as well as the chairman of the city and district councils. Khasbolatov supports the desire of Siberians for economic independence and understands the issues that concern everyone here. He answered their question today, saying that life will be difficult for all of us in the next 2 or 3 months because at the present time we have only shock and no therapy. He plans to accelerate the reform. I believe it is totally inappropriate for some to try to reduce the role of the local Soviets or councils. There are some activists trying to cast doubt on the role of the Soviets, saying they are not necessary. I believe we need measures which will reduce confrontation and contradictions. Today, after a short break, the session of the Ukrainian Supreme Soviet renewed its work on forming a budget and creating a new cabinet of ministers, the reorganization of the government, the fight for the Black Sea Fleet, the situation in the Crimea. The Ukrainian authorities will have to resolve all of these issues. They did not manage to do so today. The Supreme Soviet of Ukraine began a clause-by-clause discussion of the draft law on taxation of enterprises and organizations. The discussion was drawn out, and the legislators in the end had to agree that in this year they will have to significantly reduce spending on social programs because of the budget deficit. This will include Chernobyl programs. Today, the recently formed social organization New Ukraine announced its formation. Many People's Deputies have joined it. They announced their plan for taxation and budget. Today, one of the principles is not to add to the economic imbalance in relations between CIS member states. Today in Moscow, the Russian Collective Farm Congress opened. Without the 13,000 collective farmers, the country cannot get by, and the peasants do not want to take the land themselves. These are the theses of the Congress, which is taking great efforts to try to convince the government to change its land reform course. The main issue here is agrarian reform. The Speaker of the Russian Collective Farm Congress, Vorontsov, and other speakers support the reform of the government in general, but criticize it, and especially the local authorities' implementation of the reform, the division of the peasants into collective farmers and private farmers, and the seizure of collective farm land. They believe all this will lead to hunger in the country. They said that price liberalization has cut off access of the peasantry to the market. The price of energy resources and equipment has risen by up to 40 times, but agricultural products prices have risen only 3 to 4 times. First Deputy Prime Minister Bulis spoke to the group. He said, the main thing is the transformation of state and collective farms into associations of peasant farms, stock companies, cooperative organizations with shared equity property arrangements. These questions must be decided by the peasants themselves, who are the owners of the land. At the Congress, there were proposals to create a union of agricultural producers and to create a round table at which representatives of the government, peasants, and industry could concretely and constructively resolve their problems. Mr. Khlistun, the agricultural minister, spoke to the Congress. It will continue its work tomorrow. There was an agreement today to sign a treaty on mutual cooperation between the Russian government, the Association of Peasant Farmers, signed by Yegor Gaidar, and the president of this farmers association, Vladimir Bashmashnikov. Today at a press conference, they emphasized that the rumors that Western aid is being sold in commercial organizations are untrue. This was the statement by Deputy Chairman of the Commission on Humanitarian Aid, Mr. Zhitnikov. We are mainly receiving meat and butter, which are being sold in state stores, he said. The proceeds go into the Fund for the Social Protection of the Population. Medical supplies are going only to hospitals. He said that last year, 240 million tons of food were received, and we expect to receive another million tons in the near future. The distribution is being handled by 1,500 officials who are being helped by 200,000 workers of the system of Social Security. The issue arose of the equal distribution of aid. Most of the aid is going to Moscow and St. Petersburg, whereas 31 additional regions are in need of aid. Of course, this is a good program, but we should not rely too much on rich foreign uncles. Is it not time for us to provide for ourselves? Our correspondent reports from Estonia that in the place of a government crisis, we now